So we therefore are proposing as a solution for social transformation the homegrown solutions using the model called collective enterprise model. And that's the one I want to share with you on a slide so that you see how it works, because it's an approach that encourages co-creation and scaling of homegrown solutions. It also acknowledges that to be able to work, to be able to co-create, you have to look at the whole ecosystem. So you look at the community, you look at the private sector partners that are around us, we look at the government, because without policies that was mentioned earlier, we are not able to make the kind of transformative change that we would like to make. We are also looking at our mentor modes. What are we carrying with us from where we are coming from? Because the culture of we have deep-rooted culture that sometimes works for us, but sometimes influences how we move, because then we are unable to embrace creativity when we allow some of the cultural, should I say, you know, no, I think the knowledge is good, but sometimes it stops us from moving forward the way we would want to do that. So we're looking at that and seeing how that works. So when we're looking at those challenges around how we move for collaborative value using the collective homegrown solutions, and as well as the model, we have 3 levels of intervention. And those 3 levels of intervention are very key, because then they are the practices which we all know about. Because practices are easy for us to say we are entrepreneurs, we are innovative, we can learn, we can do the other. And we can also look at, say, when we talk about the fact that we have funding, we don't have funding, those are pretty simple in terms of we know we have money or we don't have money. But when we come to the next level of intervention, we are looking at relationships. What kind of relationships are we building? Have we been able to build new relationships that are important for us to make the kind of change that we want to make? Are we relating with the right people? Are we connecting with learning institutions like Tangaza and the others that are coming up with different approaches to solving problems? Are we looking at how we are building leadership around the solution? And then the most difficult, the 3rd level, is the mentor modes, because that's, you know, like when we keep on talking about what you see above the water, you know, there's that diagram where we say that you don't see what is beneath the water. So what is beneath the water in this case, the mentor modes, is the baggage that we carry with us as we try to change the way that we work. Because I come with my own baggage that could be as a result of my how I grew up, or the schools I went to, who taught me what, my interaction with you also have yours. So we have our different baggages. So how do we ensure that this baggage does not affect how we co-create, and how we interact, and how we build solutions? So that is a model to work. So I just wanted to say that as we were doing this research in Africa, some of the important things that we realized, or the things that we realized are important to really build a model that works. One of them is sharing information. We realized that entrepreneurs, like it's even written, it was written by the people who discussed entrepreneurship earlier. Okay, there are the slides finally. So let's next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, no. Okay, there. Okay, I think I'd introduced the collaborative value partners. So we can move to the next slide. Thank you. Next slide, yeah. So this is where I was saying that we are proposing transformation in Africa through homegrown solutions. And we are looking at African entrepreneurs taking collective approach. So that I'd already explained. Next slide. So the research indicates that homegrown solutions possess development processes across time and space show that truly sustainable economic growth and development can only come through self-reliant homegrown strategies. So that had been said earlier, and research says the same. So homegrown solutions do not only form strong foundations for development strategies, but hold great potential to act as catalysts in fostering innovation. So we've also seen that as Africans, we are not homogeneous, and therefore we need solutions that are specific to the different areas that we are at. So our theory of change, I won't take a change that takes us from where we are as change makers to systems change or transformational change. We have to work together through different steps. We have to agree on what works for us as Africans, and then we have to ensure that there's innovation that comes with our solutions. And then at the end of the day, we have to look at the policies, practices, resource flows, power dynamics, and mental modes, which I had discussed quickly. So the collective enterprise model is a mechanism for rolling out the homegrown solutions. So it looks at how teams make their goals themselves, how they coach each other, how they deal with conflicts, how they negotiate conflicts, how they negotiate for the best results, how they share information and ensure that the information works for all of them, and even how teams embrace social capital. And this is the result from the research that I mentioned that we did in Africa. So this is the collective enterprise model. As you can see, at the center of that is the shareholders and entrepreneurs and researchers. And those are the people that are creative and innovative.
Kindly move the slides to the next so that you can see what is being shown. Yeah.
Go on. Okay. That's the theory of change. The next one. Wait. Oh, I didn't realize they were not moving with me. Okay, next slide, please. Yes, that's the collective enterprise model. At the center of that is the innovators, the creators, the entrepreneurs, and experts. So this is where we bring the solution carriers or the people co-creating together, and they work in partnership with the community. And this is not going to be transformational if they are not working with governments or working with the private sector partners. And they need a backbone organization to ensure that all these parties are working together. Next slide. So I mentioned the areas that matter, the 6 conditions for transformational change or systems change, and I won't go into that again because I talked about the policies, the relationships and connections, the power dynamics, practices, resource flows, and the stakeholder mental modes. Next slide. So when we look at relationships and connections, the questions we ask ourselves are, what is the quality of connections and communication occurring among actors in the system, especially among those with differing histories and viewpoints? And those are the baggages that I was talking about. And you can see the red space there is what is affected. If the relationships and connections are not working, it means that the loop is not complete. As we go to the next area, which is the resource flows, next slide, we're looking at the money, people, knowledge, information, and other assets. And you can see the loop that is affected. Again, it's not complete, and you're not able to complete and make the impact that you want to make if there are problems with the resource flows. If for example, what is coming from the market is not coming back to the collective shareholders. So currently we are working with 17 organizations in 5 countries, or is it 6 countries? Tanzania, Uganda, South Sudan, Nigeria, and Kenya. And I'll just give you an example of one. One of them in Sudan is working on women economic empowerment of and they're making peanut butter. That's what they're doing. And using the 6 areas that are important, we are therefore working with them to ensure that there's distributed leadership. And this is between the women groups as well as other community members that are important in this collective enterprise model. We're looking at the resource flows to ensure there is sustainability of the businesses the women are doing, because the women are making peanut butter that they grow in their own farms, and then they're selling this to the market. And there's a ready market, but even with the ready market, there has been a problem of sustainability. And this has come, it's a longer story, but this has come because of donor funding that has disrupted the flow that is supposed to be effective, because they're supposed to ensure SDG 1 on no poverty, SDG 5 on gender equality, 8 and 17 on partnerships. So this is something that needs more time for me to explain in more detail, but I think you're getting the gist of how that works. So this organization, giving it as an example, they are looking at the policies, because we say policies are important. The policies within the organizations, the policies that govern the women groups, as well as the policies that the government policies that are in line with this. They're also looking at the market itself and the private sector organizations. Where does the peanut butter go? Can we scale the market? How are we packaging the peanut to ensure that the market is well accepted, and that we can take this peanut butter beyond Sudan, and so on and so forth. So I think because my time is over, I'll leave, if there are any questions on the model, I'm happy to share, or rather to answer. But for now, I leave it at that. And I say thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Wamoyo. Thanks a lot. And so I'll ask Mr. Wachira really to tell us your experience in working with transformative business model. Dr. Wamoyo,
My name is Harun Wachira. I have also just asked my slides to be put in there. If the PowerPoint does not work, I can make this to be my pulpit. And I live in Kenya. I can start with my own personal introduction. I'm on my third career at this particular time in my life. When I was 19, I wrote a story that won me a scholarship to college, and so I studied communications. And then I edited a magazine for about 7 years. Then I college fees and my kids' school fees. At that time, writing could not afford it. So I switched to software development, and I wrote software for about 20 years. And it is in the process of writing software that I began getting involved in a church. We had a church in a rural area, and I was shocked to discover everybody was poor. The entire 150 members. And that got me very confused, because I did not grow up that way, even though I had grown up as in a rural setting. And we began to look at what it was that made people poor, and I discovered dysfunctional work methods, lack of protocols, lack of documentation, people don't read. Everything that I went to school about did not exist. The parents educated children to take them away from the village. And so we formed a school, local school, which was called the Saturday School, and it was to teach people better ways of working. The shock was I had no experience in agriculture, but talking to researchers, talking to different people, we would develop a protocol for every type of activity, and we would succeed. For example, we changed the way they plant yams. Yams are like, there's a different plant in Kenya. I know some people call cassava yams, but people harvest about 2 kilos, and we were able to harvest 100 kilos from one cassava, one yam pole. Milk production, we were able to increase production from 1.5 liters per cow to about 20 liters in 2 lactations. So anyway, to cut a long story short, I was very perplexed, but because what we were doing was not very complex, but it was bringing about transformative change. But in the process of doing that journey, I was nominated and I became an Ashoka Fellow, and Ashoka forced me to go full-time. They said, if we honor you as an Ashoka Fellow, you have to convert to be doing this all your life. So I found myself deep into agriculture. I liked what I was doing, but I did not know it would support me. So I had a stipend for 3 years, and by that time I had to have developed a business model. And that's the business model that now it's in, I think we are at the scaling level in our business, because we are working with more than 300,000 farmers now, and at the same time sequestrating about 700,000 tons of carbon from the ground, and in the process earning for everybody in the value chain about 7.6 million euros a year. So I would say at this particular moment we are big. The difference between a traditional business is that it's okay Gladys, I'll survive. A traditional business only accumulates value to its own shareholders. A social business model accumulates value and shares it across the entire value chain. So in our business model, we require that 15% of the income we are making for our investors to be, yeah, that's me. We are now going to fast forward, move to the next one. The next one is my introduction. I've already talked about that. The 17 years I worked with PricewaterhouseCoopers was in the software world. Move on, please. The next one. I think you have to, yeah. Okay. Now that's it. In terms of today, where we are, we have several companies that work together, and 90% of our income at the moment comes from carbon credits. The carbon credits come from communities. Please move on, and then we share that with, we share the money across with investors, we share with the community, and we do what we want to do with the community, like to develop schools and things like that, based on the income that we are getting. So we're not funded by donors, we are funded by investment funds. Please move on. I want you to move on, and yes, there. This is the example of an exploitative business model. Coffee, and you can apply that to coffee, you can apply to tea. They were all businesses that were established by the colonial masters, but then after the colonial masters went away, we continue to just sustain those models. So coffee, a lot of the work is done on the ground, and then the value addition that increases the value of that coffee by more than 5 times is earned abroad. Please go to the next slide. Sorry, and I'll show you the exploitation in it. Press the button like 2 or 3 times. I don't know why that is happening, and then it's refusing to move even on my screen. Just move on to the next one, please. There. This is a good example of what you can see that the coffee price has remained the same all the way from 1980 to date. It fluctuates up and down a little bit, but it's the same. So the farmer, the money we were getting with coffee when I was growing up is the same money in dollars that a farmer today is paid. But if you look at just over the last 20 years, you can see inflation on a year-to-year basis has been going up. And if you are an economist, you can calculate and tell me whether somebody can make a living out of coffee. It's exploitation. And in a separate session, we can discuss how that gets sustained. I've been in it, I studied it. Next slide, please. Now, a social business model is designed to create, to capture value and share it. And that's what we have tried to develop. That's just a description of it. And you have to address all the steps in the value chain in order for it to be able to. Coffee as an example, the challenges are low productivity, the quality-based pricing, and the fair market. And I don't have the time to be able to 6 steps, but those 6 steps have increased the earnings of the average coffee farmer who is in our value chain by more than 5 times in terms of income, because of following up a protocol, because of getting free agronomy services funded by our carbon credit, because of facilitating them access to loans based again from carbon credits, being able to link them up to a direct market and increasing their own productivity. I think the average right now increase with a farmer who worked with us for 3 years, they would increase their productivity from 2 kilos per plant per year to 20 kilos per plant per year, and they stop using fertilizer because we can enrich the soil directly using organic means. So next one, you can do that. We are working with about 5 different crops, and in every one of those crops we have achieved those sort of numbers. That's one example of a coffee farm that is part of our development program. You can see the intercropping with bananas, and we intercrop also with other trees like avocado, macadamia, and the farmer manages to get a lot more income. Next slide, please. Change. And at the moment, everybody is looking to buy carbon offsets or to go net zero as a result of their conscience, wanting to do good. And a Nobel Prize in 2021 was won on the climate change, and since then the price of carbon that you have offset has become very, very high. I got involved in carbon credits in 2004, and everything about carbon credits is publicly shown. So if you look at my profile in Gold Standard, you would be able to see the quality of my projects. So that has made it possible for investors in carbon markets to look for people like myself who have been in there for a long time. Now, next one, please. Just a few slides, just a few. Press. There you go. That was my first project, Aqua Clara, in 2004. We distributed 4,800 water filters, and they all were registered in a carbon credit program. I wasn't part of the sharing of that income. To date, that money goes to a Western company, and I got very offended about it. But I used it to learn and understand how carbon credits work. In water filtration, it works because you have provided people with water that is safe to drink, but you don't have to boil it. Then I did for Easy Life a distribution of charcoal stoves in Kenya, and they all got involved in carbon credit, but a new owner did not want to do carbon credits, so effectively I left and moved on. Please start the next slide. These are all the projects I've been involved in. Next slide. These are the companies that I am now working with. I was introduced to EcoAct, or rather EcoAct was introduced to me by Ashoka. They were looking for somebody who understood carbon credits, and they called Ashoka in France, Ashoka called me in Kenya, and I became a consultant. Today they are partners, and we have since then added other partners like the ones on the screen, and between all these partners we have projects on biochar and trees and cook stoves, and using the income, our portion of the income, to do development work in the communities. Next one, please. Next slide. This is the way our programs are structured, the social model. We get carbon offsets by doing things on the ground, like planting a tree or distributing a stove or a water filter or spreading biochar into the fields. Those carbon offsets are documented, UNFCCC, they all developed mechanisms for calculating these offsets and converting them into a tradable piece of paper called a carbon credit, which is sold in the international market. Mostly all our carbon credits are being sold in Europe. I don't know how many of you have seen a company called, a game played by children called Subway Surf. Have you seen it? Kids play it, Subway Surf, and they play the running, avoiding vehicles, avoiding trains that we sold to Subway Surf. And as a result, they have asked us to produce 10 times more carbon credits for them because they think they can be able to sell to 30 million of their customers credits that can enable them to become net zero. So they're not even doing it for trading. They just want to buy them to become net zero. And they're making so much money from that game that it is possible for them to do that. So when the carbon credit is sold, the investor gets his money back. We get, as implementers, our money portion of carbon credit, and the 15% of the share goes back to the community, where we use that money now to work with members of that community to address the things they want to deal with. Like, for example, building a school, or upgrading a health facility, or like providing clean water. All the things that donor organizations normally fund, but very grudgingly, we can now deliberate in partnership with the community. And because carbon credits are long term, like a carbon credit program for trees is 30 years. So you have time to do whatever. Just showing you some pictures. Those are the kind of projects that qualify. Everything from biochar to clean cooking. You can see the stoves can be as simple as the ones that were being displayed there. In our case, we don't sell the stoves because they are funded by carbon credits. We are able to give them out in large numbers, like 100,000 to 150,000 stoves to members of the trees will not require a lot of watering, things like that. And in the next slide, next slide please, you can see we also work with biochar in a research program that we are doing with a university. We fund the research to test the impact of charcoal in the ground, not charcoal for burning, not for cooking. So this is an experiment using different crops on the impact of biochar, and that's published as a study, against which now we will implement a carbon credit program for returning charcoal into the ground. Next one, we do research with Kenyatta University on thermal efficiency. You can see all those stoves marked, some of them with coffee husks in the liner to improve the thermal efficiency, others with the different materials, the way you shape the units, the designs, all of that. So we have a team at the Kenyatta University that we are funding to do this research, and then we improve the efficiency of the stoves that we distribute progressively. Next one, we also have another partnership with Professor Kahangi. She was the pioneer in Kenya in tissue culture. We are working with her on vegetative propagation of species which you cannot get easily from seed. Like, I have a passion for camphor wood, that tree, the Ocotea usambarensis, which is wiped out completely from Mount Kenya, very valuable, like mahogany, but it's decimated. And we are right now producing several million units of those through propagation by working with vegetative methods, whether tissue culture or just working with the stocks. And Professor Kahangi is leading a team with us to do this. So what Dr. Wamoyo was saying about research and universities, all of that working together. Next one, we have a partnership with Murang'a University, in which that was a class that I lectured, and I drove in there with a very big car because they were refusing to register for agriculture because they were told agriculture is a poor man's game. I told the professors I'll come with a very big car and I will have somebody carry my bag for me into the class, and then I give a lecture. After I did that, all these students are looking for me, and they want now to do agriculture in large numbers because they think you do agriculture, you become very rich. We are working with them to develop protocols for training farmers in the field, and then working with the student body or the students who are taking agricultural courses and pay them to go and teach the farmers. So those are the kind of things we are doing, and I think here, my last slide, go on, is to show you the opportunities that are there. Go on, please. Please, next. The resources and game changers. We have a team, we have tools, we have proprietary designs, we have university research, all those things are the ones that make our business revolutionary, and they are all working together. I thought Wamoyo was copying from my work in the field to come up with a piece presentation, but you can actually see how together we are. We hadn't talked about this, but all the things that she was talking about, to create that cycle, you need them. Next one, please. This is our structure of our company. Sorry about this. Yeah, there you go. So that's the way we are structured, as a group of organizations working together. So we have the research, a technologies division. Each one of them is registered as a separate company so that we can keep track of each and hold each other accountable. We have a company that adds value to everything from coffee to moringa to hibiscus from the farmers and sell it to the market. We create markets using Akili Foods. We have a training institution that signs the partnerships with the universities. And we have a donor, an NGO called Akili Development Organization, which deals with donor-funded projects. And then we have a SACCO, a cooperative that gets a portion of the carbon credits, so that each person who is a member never have to worry about how much money you can borrow. And because we're working inside a community, you can join the SACCO today and tomorrow take a loan to be able to buy an input for your coffee. So waiting periods, bank checks, they don't apply, because you can work with the group that we are working with. So those are all the projects that we are working on and the partnerships that we have, and we are right now beginning to expand into Zambia and other parts of Africa like Cameroon. I think that really is my last slide. And I would say, yeah, sorry, I have to tell you, these challenges, go to the next one. I tell you about challenges and the opportunities, and I add. Those are the challenges. The biggest one for us is government, because whenever we deal with government at any level, the issues of corruption comes in. We don't pay bribes, so I've closed, in my life, I've closed about 4 businesses because of corruption. I still do not give bribes. I have a personal commitment never to give a bribe, even if I have to actually go home and eat one type of meal a day. But so that becomes a big problem. Large subdivisions, you work with farmers, they plant your trees. 3 years later, they suddenly decide that they have to subdivide that land, and the person inheriting one portion suddenly does not want the trees. So those sort of problems, and of course, trouble in the family, and then the compliance. Carbon credits are very unforgiving. If you don't comply, you get carbon credits taken away from you during the external verification. So if, for example, a man and a woman fight and they go separate ways and the cook stove is not used that year, and you are caught in the verification, it will be prorated against the number that they examined. If they examined 10, that would be 1 stove out of 10, it's 10%, you would lose 10% of your carbon credits that year. So that becomes a big issue. These are the opportunities that you have, whether you are a professional, whether you are an organization, whether you are an individual, and I think that is really a value chain that Bill Gates said that carbon credits, the carbon value chain will produce, he believes, in his lifetime, at least 2 companies that are bigger than Microsoft. And I'm very happy that we are part of that growth and growing with it. And I think this model can be extended across all of Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Wachira, for that presentation. I can ask you to join, to remain seated, and then we get a presentation of Ms. Sylvia.
Request for my slides to... Yes, I'm Sharon Nambuya, and I'm from Medicine Sans Frontiers, Malawi Mission.
You can be a bit closer to the microphone, so that, yeah.
And I want to talk something, a sector that is different from agriculture. I am in public health, and MedSense as an organization has been working like any other organization with their own traditional ways of approach to respond to health in communities where there is conflict, where people are not able to access health services. Someone moving the slides, please. Yeah. So I have a small definition which I want to add on because I'm also a student of Brother Jonas. We talk more sustainable development and social transformation in everything that we do. So me being a social scientist, it was very difficult for MedSense to accept something called social innovation in what they were doing, because traditionally or typically they were an emergency response organization that was responding to only medical emergencies. And to convince them to adopt something called social innovations was very difficult. So I said, you have to give me something to try out. Please move the slides. Because this is the traditional way NGOs work. They go in a place, do the assessment, and then design a program for intervention and apply for a grant. This is good, but it has its pros and cons. The only difference with MSF is when it comes to the assessment part, they would involve the community, and they do it together with the community. When it comes to intervention, they sit as the staff, as an organization, and give what the intervention needs. And then they're independent with their funds because they don't have to wait for the funding from an organization like MFI or World Bank or anything. MSF is made up of members like you and me. It's an association. So all the time, the fundraising is within those members. And so how we do activities is you sit and debate on what is happening in which community and how can we help, and then go down and do what we need to do. We don't need to wait for the funders to do something. I think that's the beauty of this organization. That's why I have been with them for a very long time, about 12 years. And every time I want to move, I fail to move because I think that I might not do things that I need to do because of that. And so we moved. When I started the social innovation kind of implementing projects in MSF, it was very difficult because they said, we are an emergency.
Kindly, I think let's have one conversation.
We are a medical organization, so we cannot do social work. I said, look, here is not the only, if someone is not healthy, they cannot do anything else. So, but if they're healthy, they will take care of other social needs. So moving them from that traditional mindset has been a fight, but still I have been fighting with them until they agreed. So they first sent me, I did a social project in France with the minor immigrants, and because I was fighting with the government about protection, and I said I have to go social, so I approached families that were willing to be foster parents to children that were not accepted by the government for protection. To me it was a success, so they sent me to Kenya, and I started a clinic for the youth but with a big social component to address social needs. It meant that I developed a curriculum that included life skills, social skills, but this I could not do it as just MSF. We needed to do community engagement, we needed to do a lot of partnerships with local organizations and the beneficiaries themselves. So everything we did from the assessment to the planning to the implementation, management of the project, and also the monitoring and evaluation was done in a social way, like partnership with the community. And that was a very big success. So they then sent me to Malawi, and I'm doing the same things, but with HIV, TB, and cervical cancer. So looking at this, it's majorly about what social innovations can do, because we have seen things come out in a very big way when people come together other than doing it as an individual and thinking that you are an expert. Because in my social class, I've been in the sustainable development class, Dr. Jekitule taught me that there are people who went somewhere as an organization and they started to dig water because there was no water in this community, but they went to the valley side and dug and they could not get the water. But because they had not consulted anyone in the community. So how do you intend to know someone's house better than they know their house? So then an old man came and said, try the upper side, like it's a hillside, but they found the water, which means people in the community know what is best for their problems and the solutions. And these solutions have to be effective. They have to be efficient if you have to meet the goals, and they have to be sustainable, because what makes sustainable development is creating solutions that are more reliable, but also the solutions which not only satisfy the current needs, but also cater for the future would-be problems. If we do any social innovations that are not going to cater for the problems that will be in the future, then we don't have to start them. So everything that I start in MSF, I start when it can only be sustainable and when it can only protect the future generation. That is what I do. Can we move a bit? So that is what currently MSF is encouraging and supporting field staff on activities like capacity building. In the national staff, like we work with partnership with other stakeholders like the Ministry of Health and other NGOs. We do sensitizations in communities using health promotion. That is a strategy that is focusing on advocacy and also preventive measures other than curative that we used to do. You arrive in the place, do the response to cholera and other emergencies, but when you leave, what happens is what I started thinking about. We need to do things that will not leave the community again to come back and do the same thing. We have to create a solution that will be sustainable. Teach them how to take care of their environment, how to prevent the cholera and all that. And then this was what I was telling you about, sorry, go up a bit. Okay, Dandora in Nairobi was the project that I did in Dandora slum, and it was majorly for the youth between 10 to 24 in partnership with other local NGOs and the community at large. And then Malawi, we have cervical cancer, HIV, TB. We include everything that is necessary to make the patients understand that they can take care of themselves even after MSF has gone or any other medical organization has gone away. They can still take care of their health problems. Move, please. Okay. This is the key strategic objectives in MSF operations in social innovations as for now. we are involving patients and the community in everything that we are doing. So this means that we are going to involve the patients in deciding the care and the services given to them and the desired outcome. We are also having community adherence support groups working to support patients with chronic illnesses, because if people work as peers in anything they do, they support each other. So for this, we have peer groups that have the same problems, but they can support each other all the time. Then we have measures taking on retention in care, because sometimes you have a chronic disease but you fail to really take the medication because you don't have any support. But then what do? If we have a peer, we shall ask your friend who has come for the drug refill, like, how is so-and-so doing? Can you link us to the person? Where are they? That is kind of tracing, but using the peer navigators, and that is involving peers to do this kind of support. The main challenge that me personally and any social scientist would have encountered with MSF is accepting this shift to understand services people. And it was so difficult because as like I am taking the picture of sustainable development and social transformation. I wanted to transform what I had studied in Tangaza to these kind of things. And I'm happy today that it has worked. And the organization now looks at it like it's magic. It works magic, but I didn't apply any rocket science. I just did what I learned in class. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, I want to ask the panelists now to come at the center. Now we don't have a presentation anymore. We want to engage them. We have half an hour to engage them. We have heard experiences from different fields. We started with Dr. Wamoyo telling us about the collective enterprise model, which is a model that emerged out of research. And from the research now, we are trying to apply that, okay? And then we have Wachira bringing us to this whole world of carbon credit, that you can make money out of carbon credit and be able now to plow that back to the community, support the community, and totally different model, okay? And Sylvia has talked to us. You know, we know MSF. I think we know MSF, and then we know them, what they do. And then we are trying to bring us to say, yes, even from their traditional model, there is a shift that can happen to more transformative model. Then we are talking about the integration of the social care to the medical care. Okay, if I can summarize what you have said, okay? Now, from all this, I think we want to get out of this room having very clear, what is this transformative model we are talking about? And what is the connecting point? Whatever transformative model that you take. For me, I've just picked one thing. It's community. Because I think it's a word that basically you have all emphasized that the model, whatever form it takes, has to create value for the community. I think there is a word that was used. I think Mr. Mashiro used that word, the social value to the value to the communities. Now, if you want to, now I'm throwing back to you in one word from your experience, your practical experience. What's the core of transformative model? So that when we are looking at different business model of operation, we're able to say this one is a real transformative model. Let me start with you.
You say one word?
Yeah, A sentence. Oh, just a sentence. Maybe I don't want to be very complicated.
Let me use the word generational change, but you allow me to explain.
Yes, yes.
Only this very quickly. When I first of all got involved with the church, and over a 7 years period, we transformed 150 families, and they all came out of poverty. They gave all of us the benefits that we now have. I became an Ashoka Fellow. I wasn't seeking it, but we all benefited. When I went away for a number of years and came back, I was shocked to find that more than 90% of the 150 families had all gone back to poverty. That to me was very shocking, because if somebody has New York and then you move away from that person, why would the person abandon that method to go back to the old ways? When somebody is digging a hole, only digging a hole and planting a yam and getting effectively enough income from one hole to support that family for a whole month, and with 12 holes of like $100 every month, and you have done this for 7 years, and then because Wachira has gone away for a short time, you abandon it. Why? So to me, that was the big issue, and I discovered that if you really want to transform society, it has to be a generational change. The colonialists transformed us through a generation of keeping us under colonialism, and to date we still follow their ways, like in the Coffee Valley tea. So I determined that I would design a system that would lock people into a prosperity mode for a generation. And that's why I go for long-term programs, 30 years. We work with that community. We have time for research, we have time for change, we have time for education, we have time to do all kinds of things year after year after year. And then the kids will be born in that environment, and they will grow up seeing only that new model. And that is when transformation will have happened. Generational, my approach at the moment.
I think Ashoka should have taken that back from you to say.
Yes. But now I'm back,
But
I'm back there.
it's interesting. I like what you say. What I'm hearing that it's supposed to be it's supposed to be a generational change. A transformative model is something that is kind of projecting to a long term.
Yes.
Okay, so the prosperity is perpetuated. That's interesting. That probably we can also see that as a characteristics of a transformative model.
Absolutely.
Sylvia, what from your experience, what do you think is a transformative model?
I think from my experience, I have seen transformative model as that model that embraces the change of mindset, processes, organizational processes, and policies. Because if I take an example, when I was introducing for chronic diseases, because they didn't have food, and then the patient will look at you and say, have you swallowed this drug without any food? And then you don't have an answer, but you give the food. And they did a lot of social things, but in a more very not sustainable way. And so we started this program for cash with a partner organization, and they had a condition for their cash transfer. They say it is called unconditional cash transfer. It has a right to do anything with their money without us interfering. I said, well, that is good, but with the type of patients I have, they're very vulnerable. Some of them, when you give them money, it's a cancer patient, maybe with the Kaposi sarcoma, which is very painful, and sometimes they don't have maybe drugs to kill the pain. And the patient will go and just drink that money and come back and do not have the money anymore. But we were giving transport, we were giving food, we were giving some roofing. It was not sustainable. That's why we wanted this cash transfer and work with partners to educate these people about entrepreneurship skills, so that they can at least sustain themselves even after we have gone away. So I would go to a patient and ask, okay, so what did you do with your money? And they don't seem to know anything that they want to do with the money, or they say, I'm going to sell Bania, but this person has no accounting skills, has no nothing. And I'm like, have you thought of rearing a goat or a chicken? And oh, that sounds good. So I realized that they needed someone to just do that, and they will give you solutions. So to me, it is mindset and change your processes, and that's why that partner had to confirm to what I was saying. I said, we are not going to work with unconditional cash. It's not possible. We have to support these people to realize what they want to do with this money.
Yeah, thanks, Sylvia, for that. You kept talking about change of mindset, and this mindset is in the people. Yes.
When during this cash transfer the first time, we got a client because people have been used, because I talked of traditional ways.
Yes.
Assess, give, and that.
Exactly.
So these clients were like, it is a dependent syndrome. They know that they will just keep getting, and that was very dangerous because when we enrolled patients with HIV, one parent came and said, you enrolled one child, I will send this one also to go and get HIV so that you enroll her. Because this is cash we're talking about. So if it's unconditional, those are the things we get.
Yeah, that is quite challenging. And sometimes some of the old model are making peanut. And also, I like what you are bringing together, this connection between the government, the private sector, community, the markets, and all that. There are many groups of women or community groups that probably add value to what they have. What do you think this model that you're implementing with these women is doing differently from maybe others, okay, or somebody else making peanut butter?
Yeah, I think can you use it?
I think the microphone is. Can we have another microphone?
It's working now.
Okay,
It's working.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the one word, just to respond to your first question for us, is collaborative value. And that's why we called our organization Collaborative Value Partners, because we wanted to remind ourselves every day that to succeed in transformational change, we have to work in synergy with one another and not in silos. So that's what we carry to every organization as we implement the model. So even as an example, that example of the women in South Sudan, they have been working as women groups, but they never thought that the success of what they're doing is associating with other women groups in the whole, so that all of them come together, not just one woman group, but all the women groups in that area that are working in the same, or working on the same. Because then what that does is that it improves the market. They are able to brand jointly, they are able to look for a source for market, and they are also able to milling the peanut. They had to use one of the universities to design something that is working for them, that's done by hand, easy to transport, and so on and so forth. So it's in this whole mix. And of course, when we talk about collaborative value, we can't do that without looking at the connections and relationships that we make among ourselves. We can't, like we talked about the mental moods of the people. What are the mindsets? How does that come together? And of course, last but not least, how does the power, what are the power dynamics that ensure there's collaborative value? Because politics plays a very key role in either supporting collaborative value or killing collaborative value. So how is that being generated, and how does it ensure, or how do we ensure that as we work, we are able to, should I say, have it there but not let it break what we are putting together? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Shira. Yes. Kindly,
I have had the benefit of working in three very different settings. In publishing, when I did everything from making sure the articles are written, they are edited, they are published, they are laid out, they are printed and distributed. I managed the entire value chain. And we succeeded because we had 53,000 copies per month. We were the largest magazine in East and Central Africa in 11 African countries, and we dominated that market for almost 10 years. Now, then I moved on to PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is a very structured organization that where I never had to look for market. My job was just make sure the systems are running, write a piece of software that saves money. Very, very specialized. Then I moved on to this entire value chain where I found working with small-scale farmers who have nobody to support them. And I asked, how come we expect the farmers to work by themselves to do everything that an entrepreneur will do, but in very large corporations, the structures are the ones that rule. So to me, structures are very important. Production is very easy to sort out. If I train somebody to deal with coffee, within 3 years they are producing too much coffee. If I train them to produce moringa, within 6 months they are producing too much moringa. So market is the thing. And I think you cannot bring about transformation in the people's lives unless you, so that the average person never has to think, if I need money to borrow, it's available. If I need to deliver my produce, there's a place to take it. My product goes to the market, the money comes into my bank. And I think the genius of a good system is to address all of those structures, make sure even if it's only one product you are focused on, then assign people around it, and people just basically grow in that environment. You train farmers.
Talking about the market and the solution along the value chain. I think you have also listed in your presentation the challenges in the value chain and the solution against that. And listening to all of you, and then I give the chance to the audience to ask questions. It seems the success of the model that you have presented is based on collaboration. Collaboration with different partners, you have mentioned that also, and the community is also is. So what we are getting, and I think Dr. Omoyo mentioned it clearly that for these women to succeed, they need to move away from competition. They have to work with other groups and see themselves, how do we become stronger together. Thank you for that. Now, I want to throw it, we have some 15 minutes. I want to throw it to the audience for question. Okay. Can we have another microphone? So they are okay. Very good.
Thank you.